Let's discuss Machu Picchu. This is another lecture. Let's begin with the foundations. I'm Alexei, a professor, and today we will approach Machu Picchu with the same generosity of attention we would give a theorem that has survived several proofs and a few controversies. In this context, precision matters, and so does humility before the evidence.
Hi, I'm Priyanka, a doctoral student. I'm here to ask the questions that people often wonder about but don't always say out loud.
To frame our discussion, Machu Picchu is a 15th century Inca citadel located at 2,430 meters above sea level in the eastern cordillera of southern Peru, perched on a narrow saddle between the peaks called Machu Picchu and Huayna Picchu. The Urubamba River flows in a deep canyon around three sides, and morning mists frequently lift like a curtain on a stage. We observe a classical Inca architectural vocabulary: finely jointed dry stone ashlar, slightly inclined walls, and trapezoidal doors and windows that, together with careful sighting, yield notable seismic resilience.
So, I guess we can start by thinking about how the site is laid out. Can we say there's a clear split between farming and living areas? And could you define things like Andes and Hanan and Hurin for us?
It's important to understand the spatial logic. The citadel divides into an agricultural sector of terraces, called Andes or Andenes, to the southeast, and an urban sector to the northeast. The urban sector itself reflects Inca social ordering into Hanan, the upper town, and Hurin, the lower town. Hanan crowns the sacred plaza with the Temple of the Three Windows, the main temple, and the Intihuatana platform, while Hurin includes cancha compounds, workshops, and a large single-entrance building often read as akin to an aklahuasi, dedicated to selected women and high-status production or ritual. Approximately 200 buildings step down on wide terraces that double as narrow streets, all keyed to an east-west spine and to the ridge's constraints.
Building on that, why does this place matter so much today? I mean, beyond the photos on social media. And also, isn't there confusion about its name and who first found it?
Clearly, the stakes are cultural and practical. Machu Picchu is both a cultural and natural UNESCO World Heritage Site, inscribed in 1983, and was named a new Seven Wonder in 2007. It draws about 1.5 million visitors per year, with daily caps now at 4,500 and peak allowances to 5,600, and a no-fly zone to protect the sanctuary. With such visibility come perennial debates. First, the name itself. Scholarship in 2021 argues the original Inca name may have been Huayna Picchu or simply Picchu, with the modern label spreading via Hiram Bingham's early publications. Second, the trope of discovery. Agustin Lizárraga reached the ruins in 1902 and left his charcoal mark, while Bingham in 1911, guided by locals, publicized and excavated the site, later reshaping the narrative to center himself. In heritage management, these questions are not pedantry. They determine attribution, signage, and community voice. Before we get to the complexities, two basic engineering facts set the tone. First, the terraces, about 4.9 hectares, were designed primarily for drainage, not irrigation. The cloud forest climate brings roughly 1,800 to 2,010 millimeters of rain annually. So Inca engineers built multi-layered substrates of large stones, loose gravel, sand, and rich imported topsoil to shed water and stabilize slopes. Kenneth Wright's investigations in the 1990s confirmed both the layering and the likely import of topsoil from the valley floor. One might say with dry humor that these terraces drain better than many modern parking lots. Second, the builders exploited the geology. The bedrock is granite and granodiorite, crisscrossed by faults that pre-fractured stone, providing quarries in place. Slightly inclined walls and trapezoidal apertures, keyed into fractured bedrock, made the complex remarkably earthquake-tolerant.
And the setting itself is like defensible and dramatic. Steep cliffs, the river canyon, and a few controlled entry points, right? I always picture the Sungate as the way you're meant to see it first.
Speaking of choreography, the principal approach is via Inti Punku, the Sun Gate, which stages a sunrise reveal over the ridge. Other routes lead to the Inca Bridge and across the Urubamba via now lost rope bridges, indicating selective access rather than isolation. Chronologically, accelerator mass spectrometry radiocarbon dating places occupation roughly from 1420 to 1530, aligning with the reign of Pachacuti Inca Yupanqui, 1438 to 1471, and continued investment under Tupac Inca Yupanqui. Abandonment likely followed the mid-16th century collapse triggered by European contact and disease. The jungle then reclaimed much of the masonry until locals and then scholars reopened it in the early 20th century. If I may add a brief personal note, when I first walked in from Intipunku at dawn, the mists rose and the terraces read, to my perhaps mathematically biased eye, like a cascade of nested retaining problems elegantly solved. Channels captured runoff, cut bedrock-keyed walls against slippage, and the whole ensemble said, "We understand gravity, we respect water." It recalibrated my sense of pre-modern engineering, and frankly, of how ritual aesthetics and structural pragmatics can be made to align. This brings us to three large questions that continue to animate research. Priyanka, would you pose the first?
Sure. I think the first puzzle is purpose. It stayed relatively hidden for centuries, and there's still debate. What was the primary function of Machu Picchu?
We can infer from architecture, bioarchaeology, and logistics that Machu Picchu functioned primarily as a royal estate and seasonal retreat for Pachacuti, with strong ceremonial roles. The sacred plaza's masterful ashlar, the Intihuatana ritual stone, the Temple of the Sun, and an Aklawasi-like compound indicate elite ritual, hospitality, and production. Yet we do not have royal burials here, arguing against a dynastic necropolis. Agricultural output on the terraces was insufficient to feed the resident population, so provisions flowed in via roads and bridges. Maize looms large in the short-term diet and ritual assemblages, consistent with feasting and state ceremony. The site's seclusion, with cliff defenses and controlled approaches, reads as curated privacy rather than a fortress. In simpler terms, it is a palace complex in the mountains, where power was performed and sustained through ritual, display, and hospitality.
And how did the community on the mountain make that work day to day? Like, who kept the place running?
Bioarchaeological analyses, genome-wide data, isotopes, osteology, show a deliberately diverse retainer population. Yanaconas and former Akla from Andean highlands, the coast, Ecuador, even Amazonian regions. These individuals lived, reproduced, and were buried together. Notably, skeletal markers of arthritis and trauma are lower than empire-wide baselines tied to heavy corvée or military service, implying roles oriented to domestic service, ritual attendance, craft work, and administration. Animal remains, camelids provisioned from the higher Puna for meat, fiber, and offerings, guinea pigs in tomb caves, and dogs interred with humans as companions, map onto a household ritual ecology. In operational terms, provisioning networks brought food and materials up to 2,430 meters. Multiple Inca roads and river crossings, though now fragmentary, attest to robust connectivity managed by the estate and the wider Urubamba network.
To shift gears a bit, the second big question is a counterfactual. What if smallpox hadn't reached the region before or during the Spanish entry? Would Machu Picchu have stayed occupied longer? And how might that have changed things?
Theoretically, absent the demographic shock of smallpox and related diseases, imperial administration might have weathered first contact differently. Elite estates such as Machu Picchu could have continued seasonal use, with ritual calendars and hospitality intact, and succession crises might have been less acute. A longer occupation window might have produced more material updates, repairs, additional compounds, a more extended road maintenance regime, which would complicate our neat mid-16th century abandonment narrative. It is crucial to understand that geography remains the same. The citadel's selective access and cloud forest conditions would still mediate visibility. European campaigns would still exert pressure, but the timeline and the contours of negotiation and resistance could shift, perhaps producing a more prolonged coexistence phase evident in the archaeological record.
And would that mean it got discovered earlier in the colonial period? Or maybe never lost at all in the way we talk about it now?
Possibly. If occupation or routine local visitation had persisted, colonial references might be clearer and more numerous. Baltasar de Ocampo's late 16th century note about a place called Pitcos, with fine lintels, would perhaps be less ambiguous. In such a scenario, Hiram Bingham's 1911 expedition could not plausibly be framed as a singular revelation. Instead, one might see a continuum of local stewardship and periodic scholarly documentation. Heritage politics would also look different. Fewer removals under early 20th century legal regimes, less protracted repatriation. Yale's final 2012 return might be a non-story, and perhaps earlier debates over infrastructure, like the 1990s cable car proposals, would have been mediated by established community authority. Of course, counterfactuals are thought experiments. They clarify dependencies but do not predict inevitabilities.
Okay, last big question. It's about naming, which sounds simple, but isn't. What is the original Inca name of the site?
The short answer is that we do not know with absolute certainty. A 2021 study in Ñaupapacha argues that the original name was likely Huayna Picchu, or simply Picchu, drawing on Bingham's field notes, early 20th century maps, including a 1904 atlas labeling Huayna Picchu, and colonial-era toponyms. It further suggests that the label Machu Picchu became global through Bingham's publications after 1911. Yet cartographic references from 1874 also show name awareness in the area, and not all scholars accept a definitive renaming. The debate is a reminder that exploration-era narratives can overwrite local place names. The evidentiary standard here relies on triangulating maps, notes, and living toponyms without contemporary Inca texts to settle the matter conclusively.
How does that uncertainty change things on the ground? Like, for cultural perception, signage, and heritage management? Should we, call it differently?
Arguably, this affects everything from educational materials to community engagement. Dual naming that centers Quechua terms, acknowledging Huayna Picchu or Pichu, in addition to the entrenched Machu Picchu, can recalibrate perception without erasing a century of global familiarity. Management-wise, it invites indigenous consultation on toponymy, collaborative research on local oral histories, and careful toponymic mapping of the sanctuary. It also conditions how we present narratives about Agustin Lizárraga, Melchor Arteaga, and the Richarte and Alvarez families, who maintained paths before Bingham arrived. Further research is needed across archives and living communities. In conclusion, names are not mere labels but claims to memory and stewardship. To summarize, Machu Picchu is a 15th century Inca citadel at 2,430 meters, engineered for water and earthquakes, staged for ritual and elite privacy, and sustained by a deliberately diverse community. We examine three questions: function as royal estate and ceremonial center, a counterfactual on disease and continuity, and the unsettled original name. If this piqued your curiosity, consider exploring Choquequirao, a major Inca site that offers a more strenuous hike and, for now, fewer crowds. Thank you for listening. Keep reading, keep asking questions, and be kind to terraces. They are working harder than we think.
Thank you, Professor. That was helpful to think through, actually.